Hello, and welcome to the Westeros.org bonus materials for episode 5, The Ghost of Harrenhal. First, Elio will be discussing Qarth, a little bit about how it differs from Qarth in the novels, and then I will be coming back with the highs and lows of this episode.
So let's talk about Qarth. Qarth is a place that is important. This is a central location for Dany in A Clash of Kings. It's been changed quite a bit between the book and the TV show. Broadly speaking, yes, it is a port city. It is a very important port city. It controls access to the Jade Gates. In that sense, it's sort of like the way that Constantinople sat in control of the Bosporus and led into the Black Sea. So it was very important for trade. Qarth gives access to the Jade Sea and all the wealth and riches of these legendary places out there. And it's absolutely true that the Qartheen are very proud of their city. It is in the book said to be the greatest city that ever was or would be. It's also called the Queen of Cities, and they are very proud. They have this very high exotic culture. This culture is very decadent, very opulent, very full of sort of a kind of an elegant charm and attitudes. But it's almost too much. It's too much. When Dany enters, she sees all the Qartheen waiting for her. That's one of the big differences. There's this big sort of parade almost to welcome the Queen of the Mother of Dragons, and she sees them. Then the Qartheen are these tall, very pale people that the Dothraki call the Milkmen. And she says they all look like lords and ladies to her. The show has really kind of diminished the very exotic, the fairy tale-like feeling of Qarth. In Qarth, Dany feels, it's like a fever dream of all the colors and the delicate spires and everything. It's almost like she's crossed into, fairyland itself, and the Qartheen almost like elves. And there's, if you know your folk tales, your folklore, you know that in the traditional stories, elves and their fairy mounds and fairies, all quite scary. When you go there, you get changed. There's tricks, there's illusions. That isn't quite being carried out. I thought the garden party was kind of a very banal way to depict sort of the exoticness of Qarth. But it's certainly true that there's very little history to Qarth. We don't really know. It's just supposed to be very ancient, and we really know nothing like how it related to Valyrians. So in that sense, they do have the sense that it's sort of disconnected and you don't really know what's going on with it.
For this episode, let's start with a high point, the scene between Tywin and Arya. It is not a scene from the books. They do not have this sort of interaction. But when Arya tells Tywin that anyone can be killed and they exchange those looks, that is just a fantastic moment. The acting by Charles Dance, that little twitch at his mouth when he realizes that she means him as well. That's brilliant. That is beautiful. We were also quite fond of the scene between, Tyrion and Lancel. That's always fun, poor Lancel being tortured by Tyrion. But then we go on to the scene with Tyrion and Bronn meeting Helene the Pyromancer, played in a really fun way by Roy Dotrice, and we're so glad to finally see him on the show. He's of course the man who reads all the audiobooks, and he was supposed to be in the first season, but now we finally get to see him here, and it's a really fun scene where he goes, "It melts flesh, the substance melts flesh." Yeah, that's great. But unfortunately the whole episode is not quite so great. It starts, it doesn't start in a terribly bad way or anything. It's just that after the end of the 4th episode, we had really looked forward to what we knew was going to start at this episode. We knew that we were going to see the Shadow Assassin kill Renly. It's a really strong moment in the books. It is a shocking moment. It's a gory, bloody, terrifying moment, and it fell quite flat. The Shadow, we don't get the Shadow coming free from the wall, changing from Renly to Stannis and then slitting his throat straight through his gorget. We just get this Shadow slithering across the floor and then coming up behind him and stabbing him, and it doesn't live up to the books at all, and there's not enough terror. There's all these cuts between Renly, Brienne and Catelyn, and it seemed quite cheap, and it just seemed like a big letdown. And unfortunately it continued with the aftermath, where in the books George evokes in just a few lines the reaction of Loras Tyrell when he learns that Renly has been killed, or he fights his way into the tent. He kills some of his fellow Rainbow Guard companions, and he's in his murderous, grief-driven rage, and here we get a scene that is quite calm. Loris is obviously upset, and there's nothing wrong with the acting here, not that, but it's just not the scene that should have been. It should have been so much more. These two scenes together should have had people upset. There should have been tears and from the viewers. You should have felt for them. And I don't know, if there were any tears from me, they were not for the right reasons, unfortunately. I'll finish off on another point that was very disappointing, and I was sort of expecting it to be very disappointing because we knew that the Karth storyline had been changed quite drastically, and Zaro is a completely changed character, and there's this vault of Valyrian stone that seems to be hiding some secrets inside his wealth or whatever. I'm starting to think that there's a lot of good plot points from the books that are unfortunately, and a lot of characters from the books that are unfortunately being shoved into that vault, and I don't know if they're ever getting out.
Thank you for watching our little bonus material, and join us next week when Linda and I will discuss the background and our views on the highs and lows of the next episode, which is the Old Gods in Venue.